What's it doing?
Squeaking.
What if you take the car and you drive it and you hit the brake and you can feel the steering wheel shake, pulsate? When you hit the
Air.
brake.
Is that air?
Your rotors are way
Air in the system?
No air.
No.
Air will only give you a spongy brake pedal. That's the only thing air will do. Or fading brake pedal, you know, just not.
They're worn down if it's shaking or vibrating.
They're worn down. If your brake pads are worn out, will you get a pulsation when you hit the brake?
Mm,
You won't notice any difference if your pads are almost worn out and if they're brand new. No difference. No difference in the way the car performs. In fact, a lot of times worn pads will stop the car every bit as good as brand new ones. What's the problem if you hit the brake and you feel the car shake or the steering wheel vibrate or something like that?
running in a rotary.
Forked
The
rotor?
rotors are warped, yeah. They overheated, they warped, they're not true anymore, they don't run true anymore. So when the pads squeeze them, it kind of does this, and you feel it in the steering wheel, okay? Inspect, disassemble, service disc brake calipers. They're gonna go through how to rebuild a disc brake caliper. We're not gonna worry too much about that. Because, again, it's just not something you're gonna have to do. If a brake caliper is bad for whatever reason, you're just gonna get another one, okay? Again, they are rebuildable, and it's easy. Like I mentioned before, you take an air hose and put it up to where the brake line would go after you pull it off the car, and it will push that piston out of there. There's just a seal, the piston, and the dust boot. It's all that's in it. There's nothing to it. Wheel correction. If disc brakes are squeaking, make sure they're not worn out. Make sure the wear indicators aren't hitting the rotors. And if they're not, the pads are probably just not tight. Like maybe the end of rattle clips or fatigue are worn out. Maybe you have to replace the clips. Sometimes it's best just to just recommend replacing the brakes. Symptoms of the faulty disc brake. Verified customer complaint first. We've seen that 1,000 times and you'll see it 1,000 more. It's always the first thing you do, make sure you have a problem. If the customer brings you a car and you get it and he says, my brakes squeak, go drive the car, okay? Make sure the brakes squeak. Obviously you're gonna pull the car, you can pull the wheels off and you're gonna look at it. See if you see a problem, okay? Brake pedal height, verify proper operation, hoist the vehicle, move the wheels, obviously, that's a no-brainer there. Check the fluid, check the pads, see how they're worn, drive the car, see how it performs. Do they squeak, do they pulsate, what do they do? Does the brake pedal fade, is the brake pedal hard, what's wrong with it, okay? If the brake pedal's hard, what's wrong with it?
Hard.
If it takes a lot of effort to
brake fluid. The boosters have that.
The booster,
Power
yeah.
booster, yeah.
Brake booster, yep. If the pedal is spongy or goes to the floor, the master cylinder's bad, or you got a hydraulic leak, all right? If it pulsates, the rotors are worked. Okay. Replace all components that don't look good or meet factory specs. Even with operating wear indicating sensors, the visual inspection is very important. Can only be accomplished by removing the pads. You don't have to check wear. You don't have to remove the pads to check to see how much they're worn, right? You just gotta pull the wheels off, right? Everybody's seen that done or done it, right? They got those little measuring devices that you put in there and it'll tell you how many millimeters left on the pad, right? If you wanted to actually inspect the pads to see if there was something else wrong with them, you'd have to take them off. Okay? Sometimes they can look good as far as they're not worn out, but if you take them off, maybe they're glazed, maybe they're cracked. The pad could have a problem that you can't see just by looking at how much lining is left on it, okay? Make sure you don't have uneven wear. Make sure one isn't worn more than the other one. If it is, you got a caliper slide problem, right? The pins, the guide pins or the sliding mechanism is not allowing the caliper to move. This is just giving you a full idea of what where the wear indicator is actually going to tell you that they need to be replaced, but you guys know all of that. So let's say this one wasn't worn out, because all you can see is from here to here, right? When you look at it, when you measure it, and you might say, well, looks okay, it's got, you know, whatever. It's got 5 millimeters of pad left on it. You got some life left on them. But you didn't see this because you didn't take them off. Now, you're not gonna have to take them off just to check them. But if you got a problem and you can't figure out what it is, it might be best to pull the caliper off and pull the pads out, see what they look like. See what the surface looks like where it contacts the rotor. Maybe it's cracked or glazed or something like that, okay? You've all seen this before, okay? Normally they recommend replacing them at what, 3 millimeters? Is that what they tell you guys, or that's what you're used to?
They recommend it like 4 and under.
At what?
Tommy said he suggests them at 4 millimeters.
You do? Do you
Yeah,
do?
4 and
At
under.
4, okay.
Like once it hits 4, that's the bare minimum. They'll, you
Yeah.
know, let them know like,
Yeah.
hey, you know, you should get some new brakes. But if
Yeah.
it's anywhere between 3 and 0, they're like, you need new
Right,
brakes.
yeah. You better do it now,
Yeah.
okay? Yeah, we should do it now.
Yeah, when we write it
You're
down on the
okay.
paper, it's for
Yeah.
safety reasons. Same
Yeah.
with the tread.
Yeah,
If it's anything under, okay, so since Hondas are mainly front wheel drive, if the front is 5 and the rear is 4, then it's a no rotate, and we recommend new tires due
Yeah.
to safety concerns.
yeah. Okay. And you've all done that before, right?
Yeah.
Brake pad inspection as far as, how much is left life? How much life's that left on it?
You mostly do it when I have video, you do a video.
Oh, yeah, yeah, some places do an actual inspection video when they're doing the car, right? Yeah. And they send that to the customer, so, you know, the way technology is now, it's like, you know, the customer gets to kind of see everything if they want to.
Yeah.
You know, before, they just used to have to take your word for what you said was wrong with their car, and, you know, for the most part, if you're a good person, you're an honest person,
Yeah.
you know, you weren't trying to sell them something they didn't need. Because I'll tell you something, the customers are smarter than you think they are. Most of them know when you're not being honest with them. So you guys are gonna be in a business where a lot of people think you are a rip-off kind of guy, like, you know. Unfortunately, that's, you know, a little bit of the thing that surrounds the business. You know, a lot of people think that technicians just, you know, they'll sell you anything, or they'll tell you the stuff that's wrong with your car that's not wrong with it, because you don't know any better, and they're gonna make more money. I'm gonna tell you right now, don't do it, okay? If you do a good job, and you charge a fair price, and you're honest with the people about what's wrong with their car, you'll have more work than you know what to do with, and you'll make more money than you ever would trying to rip them off, okay? Don't do it. Be honest and do a good job and charge a fair price, especially if you're doing stuff on the side. Because once you get into this and you start doing it and people know what you do, they're gonna be calling you up or going, hey, I got a problem with my car, could you look at it? Now, again, it's up to you if you wanna do it, we've talked about this before. You don't have to, but if you decide you want to, you can make some nice money on the side, right? Just be honest, charge a fair price. Okay, do a good job, make sure it's fixed when you're done with it. And they'll tell their friends, they'll keep coming back. You know, I've got cars in my house every single day. And this has been going on for 30 years.
Sometimes the customers try to be smart asses because one time at Audi, the guy's tire tread was running low.
Mm-hmm.
Me and the tech was doing a tire change, we're taking out tire, putting new ones, he had tire warranty on the car.
Mm-hmm.
So we changed the tire and then tech looked at the nail looks like it's brand new, like the nail looks like it hasn't been dirt, no dirt on it. You can tell on the point, where it punctured the pointy part,
Mm-hmm.
it was like brand new, it didn't look like it was been weared out, been used. You can just tell that the customer just ran over his tire with a nail and just went to Audi and said, hey, I have a nail on my tire. So you get a free new tire and then because he was changing and he tech said you could tell.
Was the tire almost worn out and he was just trying to get a new one for free? Yeah.
You can see
Yeah.
the sides is wearing out.
That's not good.
You can just tell the tire.
So, yeah, sometimes, you know, sometimes you gotta deal with people are, you know, like that.
I just wanted to let you know that.
It is what it is.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I guess they're gonna,
At
yeah.
Honda, they told me that they don't record it anymore because whenever they tried to show the customer the video, they tried to say that, you know, that's not my car. Like, there was a couple people that were like, that's not my car, that's somebody else's car. This, that. So they ended up having to take them in the shop to look at the car and show them. And that's what they do now. If somebody actually has a problem with saying, well, you need new brakes or wheels or tires or whatever, they'll bring them into the shop and show them on the lift.
Yeah,
Wouldn't you
well,
point
if
it
the
at the license
customer's
plate?
waiting,
Huh?
Wouldn't you point it
That's
at the license
fine.
plate?
I wasn't there when they
Let-
did it.
let
They
them
just
actually
came,
see
they
it.
said that-
the other thing is, if you're doing a video on somebody's car, all you gotta do is video the license plate and then
Yeah.
bring it down so they know this is your car and this is what's going on.
Mhm.
There's no question about it, then. That's not somebody else's car. I just give you a video of your license plate. You know your license number. This
Yeah,
is your
exactly.
car. But yeah, you can have customers that wanna give you a hard time once in a while, but
Yeah, because I guess they only recorded the stuff that like, for example, if the brakes were bad, they would record them checking it,
Mhm.
and they never did the plate or whatever. But, yeah, that's why.
Yeah.
That's what they tell you, you gotta go from the back first, the customer say that it's not my car, but you gotta show the license plate first,
Mhm.
then start slowly
Exactly,
going to where you
exactly.
need to show.
Exactly. That way there's no, there's no question about whether it's your car, right? Yeah. Okay. Check for brake fluid, make sure there's obviously, no brake fluid leaks. Your caliper, no brake lines, nothing should be wet. Okay, if you got a brake fluid leak, you know, you're gonna feel it in the pedal too, because your pedal's not gonna be, it's not gonna feel right. It's going to fade or kind of go to the floor slowly if you got a hydraulic leak. But just make sure everything looks good. The dust boot on the caliper where the pad goes, not a huge deal. It's got a little tear in it or something like that, but this is just different types of caliper pistons. They make them out of this phenolic resin. It's kind of like a plastic, sort of, kind of, or they could be steel. Don't really have to worry too much about that one. Some calipers are forward mounted, some are rear mounted. This is showing you just different mounting locations. Front of the vehicle, could be here, could be here. Okay, it doesn't really matter where it is. It's just letting you know that they're not all in exactly the same place, okay? Obviously, you're never gonna see this, almost never. I've only seen it once in my life. Somebody put the calipers on the wrong side and told you that story. Like, leader screw always has to be on the top, okay? This guy did his own brake service at home. He replaced everything, but the calipers for the right and left were different, but they would fit on the wrong side. But what he had to do is turn it upside down and make it fit. So he put the calipers on the wrong side and the bleeders were down here. And he couldn't figure out why the brakes didn't work right. He couldn't get the air out of the system because the bleeder was on the bottom. No way to bleed them. Okay. Many manufacturers recommend removing half of the brake fluid from the master cylinder before servicing the brakes. Why is that?
So it
Doesn't
doesn't expand.
overfill.
So it doesn't overflow, because somebody topped it off when they weren't supposed to. Remember we talked about that? If the brake fluid's low, it probably needs brakes. Don't fill it back up, okay? Even if it's at the minimum line, there's plenty of fluid in there before it never, ever cause a problem, okay? Check the brakes, probably needs brakes, tell them they need brakes, or whatever it happens to be. But if somebody has filled it and you're gonna do a brake job, it's a good idea to do this, because otherwise the master cylinder overflows, you got a mess, and it's overfull when you're done. And sometimes you can do it this way as well. You can open the bleeder when you, if you don't want to suck fluid out of the master cylinder, you could do it this way when you compress the caliper. You can just open the bleeder, and it'll just push the fluid into here and set it back into the master cylinder. Okay? It's an option. All right. Many calipers use a hollow, what they call a banjo bolt to retain the flex line to the caliper housing. That's pretty common. Copper washers should be replaced and not reused. Okay, so this is your brake line, this is the bolt that holds the caliper. They call this a banjo fitting. It's gonna have a copper washer here and here. If you have to take this apart for whatever reason, just make sure you replace those two copper washers. Okay, that's where the seals the hose to the caliper. Okay. Retaining bolts, often called guide pins. These are used to retain the caliper to the steering knuckle. These pins also slide through metal bushings and O-rings depending on the design. We saw that before. Make sure you support the caliper with something. Don't let it hang by the brake line. We talked about this before. You can bend up a piece of coat hanger or something like that. When you take the caliper off, don't just let it hang by the brake hose, okay? If it's an aluminum caliper, which means they're pretty light, those are never gonna hurt a brake hose. I mean, it wouldn't be a terrible thing to let that one hang by the hose because they're so light. But if it's a cast iron one, got weight to it, don't let it hang off of the hose, okay? Or was telling you could take the caliper apart by putting air to the fitting where the brake hose goes. Obviously, you would have it off the car. You can just take the air nozzle and it'll pop that piston out. Got a block of wood there so it doesn't go shooting out.
This might be like a kind of common sense question. It's also pretty random. But I know some people, they like paint their calipers. Would powder coating your calipers make a difference in paint or no?
There is a special paint to do that with.
Yeah.
They
if
do
you
make
were to
actually
powder
great
coat-
caliper paint. Some
Yeah.
people do that. I mean, all it is just because they think it looks cool.
Yeah. But if you were to powder coat the calipers, would it change anything or?
No, that would be all right.
Okay.
A lot of cars come that way.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it wouldn't hurt them. But you would have to completely disassemble it like that.
Yeah.
And then obviously this area in here where the piston slides, this would have to be all taped off because you don't want powder coat in there, obviously. Yeah. Okay, that dust boot can be removed just with a screwdriver like that. I've mentioned there's gonna be a question on the test that talks about that. You need a boot driver tool to install that, okay? It's gonna be a test question. Boot driver. Sorry?
Boot driver to install that?
Yeah, that dust boot?
Boot driver tool?
Yeah.
The press fit dust boot requires what to install it?
Boot driver
A
tool.
boot driver, okay. Okay, on these phenolic or plastic pistons, if they have cracks in them, some are okay, some aren't okay, but again, you'll probably never see this because are you gonna take one apart? Probably not. But if you were gonna take one apart and rebuild it for whatever reason, maybe years into your experience and you decide, I just wanna take this apart and rebuild it, or maybe just see what's inside it, what it looks like, whatever. Okay, some cracks are okay, some aren't. It's gonna tell you what's what, who's who. Any damages found, obviously, we should replace that. This is a case study where they had to do 3 brake jobs and 40,000 miles. Well, they didn't realize the guy was towing with his car. Another problem you could have that maybe you couldn't see just by looking at the thickness of the brake pad with your little tool. In that case, you would have to take the pad off probably to see that, but in normal cases, you won't have to take the pads off to inspect them. If you have a brake problem or complaint that you think, well, the brakes aren't worn out, maybe we got something else going on, might not be a bad idea to actually pull the pads out and look at them. Okay? As far as caliper service goes, really, this is just the rebuild of the caliper. You have to remove the piston, like I said, just put air to it, replace that O-ring, the caliper boot. Make sure the caliper bore is clean, lubricated brake fluid, you're all right there. As far as the mounting surface, whenever you pull a brake caliper off, and you know the little mounting surface where the pads go, kind of holds the caliper pads on the bracket? Take a wire brush, clean those off, just make sure those are nice and clean, okay, so the pads can move, and make sure you lube the slides and all that stuff. And just use proper brake grease on it, all right? Anybody ever done rear brakes on a vehicle where the caliper required a special tool to retract it? You know, normally you can just use some sort of tool, even a pair of vice grips sometimes, to squeeze that caliper back, right? Some cars with rear brakes, depending on the parking brake type it has, you may have to actually screw the caliper piston back in. Takes a special tool to do that. You can't press them, okay? Rotating the pistons back into the caliper, a special tool is needed for that. You can buy the cheapy version of it, just a little square thing, you put a 3/8 extension on and a ratchet, and you just screw it back in. It's got 4 different sides to it, for different pin locations. Test drive your car after you do brake pad replacement. What's the first thing you do after you do a brake job? The very first thing you do. You got a car on the rack. You take the wheels off, you replace the brake pads, rotors, whatever, you drop it back down on the ground. What's the first thing you do?
Pump the brakes.
Get in the car, start it up, do not take it out of park. Hit the brake pedal, pump the brake pedal 4 or 5 times because it's gonna go to the floor the first probably 3 times you hit it. So if you get in the car, you start it up and you put it in reverse or whatever, you're gonna be hitting whatever's behind you because the car will not stop. Okay, you have to pump that pedal a couple times to get that brake fluid back up to where it needs to be. Make sure you do that. Always test drive the car after you do brakes. Make sure it works properly. So the fluid level's good. Make sure everything is okay. Bedding in the pads. What does that mean? There is a break-in procedure after you do brakes. Anybody familiar with that or have done it?
Drive it.
Make 6 to 10 brake applications from approximately 35 miles an hour, and make an additional 2 to 3 hard brake applications from approximately.
There is a break-in procedure. It only takes a couple of minutes, but you need to do that. That's actually important. Okay?
I went on one of those before, or a couple weeks ago. Like I didn't know how it worked. You know, he took me with him, so he could show me how to do it. So next time I do it, you know, I can figure it out. But we're going, we were going down the street. Before we left the lot, we did like the little like you know he did it from like 25 miles an hour. Like the lot's pretty large, so coming around the corner, it went up. I gassed it, brake. Gassed it, brake, but he was doing hard brakes. And then once we got on the main road, we took this back road towards Enterprise, and he went 65, and I thought he was gonna do another hard brake. So I'm like stuck back in my chair. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get ready for it. Slowly put his foot on the brake. I'm like, I got all ready, thinking we was gonna fly forward. He's like, no, we can't do that in somebody else's car. I mean, yeah, it was common sense, but I didn't know what the fuck was going on. So
Yeah.
yeah,
The easiest,
it was Alex.
what was it? Easiest way to do it is take the car out after you obviously pump brake pedal up. Take it out, you know, get it going maybe 50 miles an hour. And then just kind of do not a panic stop, but, you know, kind of slow down pretty quick, down to maybe 10, 15 miles an hour. And then do it again. Do that like maybe 4 or 5 times. Don't overheat the brakes, but just get them to where they're just kind of broken, bedded in, they call it, okay? And then let them cool off. So if you're doing that, and you happen to come up to a stop, it's not a good idea to come to the stop and then just hold your foot on the brake. Because now you're squeezing the brake pads against the rotor, however, it's already hot, and it's not really done with the brake in yet, or the bed in, right? So just try to do it in a situation where you don't have to stop and sit there and wait for a light, okay? Because you need to let the brakes cool off after you do that, obviously with your foot off of the brake pedal. That's just removing the air of that O-ring from the caliper. They do make a little brake hone to redo that surface, kind of like a cylinder hone for an engine. Just gives you a nice new surface on there. Put the new piston seal in there, a little bit of lube. there is your dust boot tool. Dust boot driver, that guy right there. That just installs that little dust boot on the caliper, that's the last thing they'll do. All the bushing slides, all that stuff should be lubricated with brake grease or silicone grease. You don't have to worry about that because you don't see those anymore. O-ring, dust boot, there's really nothing to a caliper overhaul kit. You're gonna get that O-ring, the dust boot, and that's about it. If you buy a new caliper for a car, you have the option of buying it with pads. It's up to you if you want to do it that way. They call it a loaded caliper, right? That way you can just drop it on, hook the brake line up, leave it, good to go. Loaded caliper is gonna have all of the hardware, pads, all that stuff ready to install. This guy's actually using a air tool to clean this up. This is the area where the caliper would mount, okay? That's not really necessary, just a little wire brush is good. Because we don't get rusty cars here, normally. This is one of those little tools I told you can buy for probably $5, $10, whatever, for parts store. In a pinch, if that's all you can do, then you can do it this way. This is that little thing I was telling you about. This is for those brake calipers where you have to screw the piston back in. It's only gonna be on the rear, it's only gonna be on some cars, okay? This has a different pattern on each side of it. Obviously 6 sides, depending on which one you happen to have. And you just put a 3/8 extension through here, and then a ratchet, and you can screw that caliper piston back in. Always double check your work, you can do that on anything, right? Causes of brake squeal. Usually caused by a movement or vibration of the brake components, normally the pads. Noise is transmitted through the air. Keep the brake pads clean. Factory type anti-squeal films, clips, whatever. Lubricate the slide points. Machine the brake rotor as little as possible with the correct finish on it. If you're going to machine the rotors, anybody ever cut a brake rotor before? Put a rotor on a brake lathe and cut it before? No?
Huh?
You ever done a resurfaced a rotor before? No. No? You ever took a rotor off a car, put it on a brake lathe and cut it? No?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
You have?
Yeah.
At the, oh, at the,
Nissan.
the dealer, huh?
Yeah.
So you've seen it done?
Yes, I've done
Okay.
it. He
Okay.
had me do it too.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, what do we got here? Causes of brake noise. This little chart's kind of helpful, I suppose, if you had brake noise that you were trying to figure out. Seen the wear indicated before. Purpose of those is for unwanted squeal. Okay, symptom guide. Pulls to one side during braking. Nobody proofread this, obviously. There's no E in braking. Brake roughness or chatter. So give me a reason that this would happen.
Correct unequal tire pressure. Loose suspension parts.
Let me see if this is gonna show up on the test. Okay, it actually does show up. Vehicle pulls to one side while braking. This could be caused by all of these except for one, is how it's gonna read.
Except.
Okay. What would cause your car to pull to one side when you hit the brake?
Restricted brake lines or hoses.
Okay? You might have a flex hose with a problem in it, you know, right where that fluid go, but not kind of, right? Brake caliper not able to pivot, slide, whatever, right? Roughness or chatter in the pedal, what's that?
It's like
Paddle.
We talked about this already, the rotors are warped, right?
Yeah.
They overheated them, somebody's hard on their brakes. Excessive pedal effort. What do you think?
What does that mean? You have to press down?
Most
the pedal?
likely, brake booster is not
Or
working
hard.
properly, but takes excessive pedal effort. Hard brake pedal. Excessive pedal travel. What would cause this?
That means it goes all the way down, right?
Excessive pedal travel, yeah, the pedal moves too far.
Messes on your low,
Could have air in the line, yeah, yeah.
low, fluid, brake fluid.
Brake fluid wouldn't cause it. If it had air in the lines, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
If it has drum brakes on the back, maybe the drum brakes are worn out because, so that could be possible. How about dragging?
I forgot what
What's
causes
the word
that.
dragging?
Is it warm?
Dragging means that the brakes are kind of partially applied when they're not supposed to be. They're dragging.
So like the caliper, only one brake pad is
Is
touching
it
the other one.
low brake?
Possibly. What's that?
Low brake fluid?
Fluid. No, here's the deal. Just so you guys know, for purposes that obviously you're gonna need to know for work and test. Low brake fluid will not cause any type of problem. None at all. Okay? Also, most master cylinders have a sensor in them. If the brake fluid is low enough that it's going to need to have fluid added to it, there's gonna be a light come on. Your red brake warning light will come on, right? Low brake fluid will not cause any kind of problem with your brakes. The way the system is designed, that master cylinder can be almost empty and the brakes will still work. Okay? So that's never going to be a concern with one of these, with a brake problem, okay? Front disc very sensitive to light application, common with a Honda, but that's kind of normal. That could be a problem on certain cars, could have something on the road or something like that. Rear drum brake skidding under heavy application, that could be a proportioning valve, something like that, which we've talked about before. Okay. Yeah, we don't need to see that. You're not gonna pressure test the brake. Most likely, you'll never have to use a pressure tester on the brakes. This is just going through a quick little brake pad replacement. You guys just measuring the rotor, you have to have a special micrometer to measure rotor thickness. As you know, rotor's always gonna have minimum thickness written on them somewhere, right? Or stamped in them, actually. What's a brake drum gonna have on it?
Diameter.
Okay, a rotor's gonna have what stamped on it?
Thickness, the depth, or not the depth.
Minimum thickness.
Minimum thickness.
What's a drum gonna have on it?
Minimum diameter.
Oops.
Max diameter.
Maximum diameter, because the drum gets bigger as it wears, right? Rotor gets thinner as it wears, all right? Okay. Dial indicator, rotor runout. Okay, we've talked about dial indicators and runout and backlash and end play and all that stuff before. This is what causes the steering wheel to shake. Obviously, this is exaggerated, but as you can see, when you apply the brakes, the caliper is actually moving back and forth, causes the steering wheel to vibrate when you hit the brakes. At that point, I don't recommend cutting the rotors or machining the rotors. I would just replace them. You see it again right there. You can actually feel this in the brake pedal as well. Brake pedal will pulsate, steering wheel will shake.
So the rotor's the problem,
The rotor is what causes that, yeah.
not the caliper.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that's caused by overheating the brakes. People that are hard on the brakes, people that do, stop in the least distance they possibly can. Those are the people that are passing you when you're coming up to a red light and you're already slowing down and coasting, and they're going, and then, okay? Install a rotor on the hub, compress the calipers. You've all seen that done before, I'm sure. This is. Yes, the answers are on the back, but don't worry about that. We're gonna go through them anyway. All done? Sure? How about you guys?
I'm gonna send it right now.
Okay. All right.
On phenolic pistons, cracks that extend partially across the piston face are acceptable. True.
Yep, it is. You may see that question later too.
Two technicians are discussing ways of removing a caliper piston. Technician A says to use compressed air. Technician B says to use large pliers. Which technician is correct? A.
A. First of all, you can't get the pliers on it to remove it. Second of all, why wouldn't you do it? Pliers are gonna scar the piston, leave scar marks in the piston. Did you have a question back there?
Yeah, for number one, where did you find that? Cause I don't see it on page 12.
All right.
On the back of here it says 1220.
1227.
It was like one of the first pages of the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on page 1227, right after.
If you look at the picture that says cracks completely across the piston face are not acceptable, but cracks partially across are acceptable.
What picture here?
The bottom picture on the right.
10613, the bottom little rotor looking thing.
10613 on 1227. Okay. Remember where we at, 3?
Yeah.
A vehicle is in for brake inspection and the red light or the red brake warning light is on. Which of these following actions should the technician not take?
Not take.
Verifying the vehicle.
Mm-hmm. If the red light warning light is on, don't touch that vehicle unless you know for a fact that there's not a brake problem. Maybe it's a park brake that's on, or maybe the park brake switch, or something like that. There should, because be something else that caused it. Just make sure you investigate if the red brake light's on. This is the answer they're looking for.
What was two?
Okay.
Okay. What's the technician doing in the picture on number 4 in Nasser?
Would be preparing to rotate the caliper.
Preparing to rotate the piston back into the caliper body is correct. Which of these parts should be replaced when reassembling? Where are we at?
Terrence.
There.
See,
See, those 2 little copper washers, yeah.
After a disc brake pad replacement, the brake pedal went to the floor for the first time the brake pedal was depressed. The most likely cause was D, normal operation.
It's supposed to do that, that's why you pump the brake pedal a few times after you do the brakes before you drive the car. Or you'll wish you hadn't, and you will be running into something.
A typical disc brake caliper overhaul kit usually includes the parts D.
Is it A? Apple?
Yeah, yeah. Hey, that's good, work that in, yeah, all right.
Technician A says that a lack of lubrication on the back of the disc brake pads can cause brake noise. Technician B says that pads that are not correctly crimped to the caliper housing can cause brake noise. Which of the following is correct? Is it C?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Shoot, on number 8, I have a question. What is the back of the disc brake pads? The back side. Which is the front side or which is the back side? Number 8.
Let me say, it said lack of lubrication on the back of the disc brake can cause brake noise.
The part that doesn't touch the rotor.
Okay. Let's find a good picture of a brake pad in the book here, since everybody has a book. Okay. How about 1234?
1234.
Mm-hmm. Back is the metal part,
Uh-huh.
front is the lining, so this would be the back.
So you need lubrication back here?
Yes.
Okay.
Or, like that, they make this disc brake, special disc brake stuff called disc brake quiet or something like that, but.
And technician,
Typically, you're not gonna have to lube that when you do the brakes, but if you have a problem with the brake squeak, maybe, that you just can't figure out, you might give that a try.
I've seen at Subaru that they put like, I don't know what, on the lining.
Oh, yeah, on the lining part, yeah, they
Yeah.
do, they brush on some sort of, like, stuff, yeah, I know what you're talking about. That's different than the, backside.
Alright.
Okay,
We on what?
10,
Nine?
right,
No,
9C, yeah, uh-huh,
We're on 9, right?
yeah.
So-
9 was C, right?
I don't think we did it.
Oh, we didn't do it, or did I give it away?
Yeah.
Technician
Oh, I'm
A.
sorry, I thought we were on 8, okay.
What was 8?
8?
Both.
8 was C.
8 was C,
7 was A, right?
7 was A, you're right,
We're on 9.
9.
Technician A says that all metal-to-metal contact areas of the disc brake system should be lubricated with special brake grease for proper operation. Technician B says that the lubrication helps reduce brake noise squeal. Which technician is correct? Both?
Yep.
yeah,
Number 10, yes.
the noise is had while the vehicle is moving forward, but stops when the brake light. Technician A says that the noise is likely caused by the disc brake pad wear sensor. Technician B says noise is likely will vary because the noise stops when the brake are applied. Which technician is correct?
Would
A.
a sensor would make the chirping sound?
Yes.
See chirping in here.
And it will most likely stop making that noise when you hit the brake. Is it actually pushes the wear indicator back a little bit, because it was just barely touching the road, and then when you hit the brake, it puts a little more pressure on it, and then usually makes the little chirp go away. Okay. What page is that on, she says?
Yeah, 'cause I don't see chirping on 1234 or.
Doesn't have-
uh,
Doesn't have to be necessarily the same word.
4.3.
They always use
I mean,
something
we've been over
similar.
the noise
Like that
before.
either.
Yeah, minimum thickness, various types of disc brake pads. Pad wear sensors often make a chirping sound when the vehicle is moving if the pads are worn out. Don't confuse that with a wheel bearing. That noise will normally go away when you actually put your foot on the brake.
What page is that you just read that?
It's at the top of 1225.
All the page references are on the back of the
Figure
test.
106-1, and since the answers are on the back of the one I just gave you, so are the page numbers, where are you gonna find the answer? Okay. Press fit dust boot requires the installation use of
Boot
a.
driver. Boot driver.
Yes, everybody knows that by now, we're gonna see that one later. We did this one. Okay, A. Chirping noise, wear indicator, stops when you hit the brake. Loaded caliper includes an overhaul caliper assembly, but no brake pads or hardware, is that true? Loaded brake caliper, if you buy a brake caliper, let's say you buy a new brake caliper, and they say, do you want just a caliper, or do you want a loaded caliper? Loaded caliper means it has everything with it. The pads, the hardware, everything. Okay? So technician A is wrong, isn't he?
Yeah.
He says no brake pads or hardware. It has everything. This guy says it has all of the stuff. And it does. What should be done after installing new disc brake pads?
Great.
This one's gonna show up on the test too. Vehicle pulls to one side, this one's gonna be on the test too. Which one won't cause that?
Except,
The bad master cylinder. Master cylinder. The fluid.
can you go back up?
I'm sorry,
Can you go back up to the screwdriver one?
I didn't hear what you said.
Can you go back up to the screwdriver one?
Screwdriver one.
Oh, boot driver.
Oh, boot driver.
Okay, never mind, I thought it was a screwdriver.
Oh, yeah. Okay, where were we? Okay, bad master cylinder will not cause a pull to one side, okay? Not possible. Brake pad thickness is the only check that needs to be done.
No.
B?
Technician B says the pads can wear unevenly.
True, yeah. B.
Yes. B. Thickness is not the only check that needs to be done. This question will be on the test too.
Number 8.
7 and 8 both.
Oh. Technician A says
Is it
that
C?
disc brake pads should be replaced when worn to minimal allowable thickness. Technician B says the pads should be removed and inspected whenever there is a brake performance complaint, which is correct.
Which is C?
Yep, both of them.
Disc brake pads should be replaced when worn to within.
This is almost the same question. It just says within 16th, but this just says a minimum allowable thickness.
So
This is also both of them. Surface finish is critical on the outside surface of the caliper piston.
true?
Yep, it is.
Finish.
Again, that's not something you have to worry about because you're not gonna be rebuilding calipers most likely. guys get your answer back there, whatever you're trying to figure out there?
Mm,
Did you need help with something?
Is the spill cup O-ring the same as the piston seal?
Yes. There's only really two pieces, or two parts that you need to replace if you take a caliper apart. If the piston's okay and you know, hone the inside surface there, all you got's that seal with the square cut O-ring, and then the dust boot. That's all there is to it. There's a seal, you know, the seal is fluid and helps retract the caliper without the brake, and then the dust boot just keeps the dust and dirt out. That's all there is to it. Next chapter is going to deal with park brake stuff. Some of this is going to be on the test too, and I'm going to help you out as we go through this too. I'm going to tell you what you're going to see. I don't want to see any bad scores on this test. Okay?
Quiz, book quiz?
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
I know the Wednesday quiz is from 105 to
112.
but in the ASE, no, like everything.
The ASC will probably cover a little bit of everything. However, as always, we'll do some practice test questions to kind of give you a feel for what they look for. We'll probably do some of those today and Monday for sure. But as far as the ASC goes, you're gonna have to, it's not a bad idea to just go online yourself, spare time, whatever, and just, you know, Google ASC practice test A5 for brakes and, you know, go through some of them yourself, and, or maybe, whatever, watch some YouTube videos. I mean, sometimes those are helpful for anything, really. Park brake questions, there's gonna be some on here, I'll let you know what they are. Oh, we wanted to look at the chapter quiz. Did you look at these already? Is there new questions on here?
The same question.
Is it the same? Yeah. So one should be test drive the vehicle, right?
Yeah.
Two should be both.
3, both.
Three should be, 3 is A.
A.
Yeah. Not a wheel bearing if it's a chirping noise. 4, C, both of them. 5 should be A, no pliers, just compressed air. Technician B for number 6, loaded caliper will come with everything. Number 7, steel piston can be cleaned with sandpaper to remove the rust. Tech B says the brake fluid should be, yeah, so just B on number 7. Cycle lubrication, and both of them for 8. Pump the brake several times for number 9. Any of the above for number 10. Park brake. There's several different types of park brakes. Okay? If you have rear disc brakes, the car could have the two brake shoes inside the rotor. We talked about that. It could have an integral caliper type where it just mechanically squeezes the rotor instead of hydraulically. That makes sense? Your park brake is typically a foot or a pull on the handle, right? So that doesn't use the hydraulic system. Those are separate, okay? Meaning it doesn't push fluid in order to apply the brakes. It does it mechanically through a cable system, or it could be electric. You've probably seen cars with electric park brakes, right? You just push a button and it sets the park brake. Does your car have that? It does? Yeah. I remember what year they put those on the Camaros, but I know some of them have. So yours has the electric park brake? Yeah. Okay.
A park brake is an emergency.
Yeah, same thing.
So would you trust that in an electric if it had an electrical problem?
Typically, your emergency brake is only for,
Emergencies.
well, they got away from that word they call it park brake now, because in the event of an emergency where your brakes fail, they're probably not going to. And that's not gonna be much good anyway. So they got rid of that term, they just started calling it park brake. So all it does is just hold the car on park, you know. Your transmission obviously will do that, but if you're parked on a hill or something like that, we've talked about that before. Set the park brake and then put it in park. Don't do it the other way around. You don't want the weight of the car to be on that little park ball in the transmission that holds the car, okay? Okay. There is standards for park brake operation. It's going to be able to hold the car on a certain amount of degree incline or decline. We'll get to that. The linkage, it could be cable operated, could be electric, could have the drum, could have a park brake beside that. Park brake shoes inside the rotor. Some of them that are cable operated have an adjustment on them. We'll go a little bit through electric park brakes. The term park brake has replaced the term emergency brake since the change to the dual master cylinder design. Meaning it's not really possible for your brakes to completely fail. Park brake must be able to hold a fully loaded stationary vehicle on a slope of 20 degrees or more. There's actually a safety standard for that. Okay? Hand force should not exceed 80 pounds. Foot force greater than 100 to set the brake. Meaning almost anybody should be able to do it. You should be able to push 100 pounds with your foot, 80-pound force on a hand brake to get the back brake to actual set. If it is cable operated, it's going to have well, this particular one has a foot operated brake. You have these control cable that goes here, transfer cables here, application cables here. So, what transmits the force passed through the linkage to apply your rear brakes?
Adjusters, I believe.
I'm taking this, reading this right off of the test. Okay?
What was the question again?
What actually moves the actuators or whatever works your rear brakes in a cable operated system? What actually applies to the brake itself? Application cables, okay? Park brake applied by lever or a handle inside the vehicle. Ratchet engages automatically and the pedal remains in the depressed position. Some of them you have to push the pedal again to get it to release. Some of them actually have a key handle release. Some cars have automatic park brakes. These are pedal operated, have automatic release mechanism, in this case parking brake, using a vacuum servo controlled by electrical solenoid. Now, you don't see too much of those anymore, but how that works was you get where you're going, you set the park brake, you get out of your car, and you go do your business, right? Get back in your car, you start it up, you put it in drive or reverse or whatever, and it automatically releases the park brake. You don't have to do it, right? That was popular in Lincoln, stuff like that.
Question, it's really easy to see drifting when people like pull the handbrake and make them rear engine sideways. If you do it on your regular car, what will affect it? Like, what will affect the handbrake? You do it on your regular car. You
Can I
just
answer
drive,
that?
you turn,
Flip
you
over.
yank the handbrake going down 60 cents to slide the car. Like, will it like snap the cable or anything or mess up the car? will it do?
Unless you do it excessively, it won't do anything. Doesn't hurt anything. All they're doing is locking the rear brakes, making the car slide.
And a lot of the times, people don't use their e-brake a lot unless they're like brand new to it, and that's the only way they can trust themselves to get that angle. Or they'll either like, clutch kick, which is holding down the clutch, give it gas, let go of the clutch, and then that also makes them, just spin to the side to catch that angle. But the only time anyone really uses the e-brake is if they're going straight for too long, you're trying to get high speed so they can get a hard angle, like for reverse entry or sideways entry. And they want to get that quick angle, so they can just jump to the side and then gas it and go straight back into it. That's really the only time that they're gonna use the e-brake. And I don't know if
That's only a cable operated.
Yeah.
If you have an electric park brake like your car, it won't do anything if the car's moving.
Yeah.
You can push the button, it won't do anything, because it knows the car is moving. Okay, it looks at the speed sensor before it'll allow it to do that, so you couldn't even do that unless it's a cable operated, where you could just manually pull a handle and it applies to the rear brakes, okay?
And a lot of drift cars that have the e-brake on it, they don't have the stock one. The stock one, when you pull it back and let go, it locks. The one that they use, it's just pull back, pull back, pull back, pull back. It doesn't lock at all.
They take the release button off of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can do it with the stock one, like
Yeah,
you
just hold the
take
button
off take off the button.
Mm-hmm. Okay, if it has a cable operated, this is an example of your lever that you pull, right? It's going to pull this cable to an equalizer. This is where your adjustment is. Okay, that equalizer goes back to your application cable. This is going to be on a threaded rod with a nut. All this does is just adjust tension on the brake shoes. This is just an example of that automatic release when I was telling you about. All that does when you put the car, when you take the car out of park, it releases the brake for you. Works off the vacuum thing off the column, I don't really care about that. Park brake warning lamp. We've talked about this before, that's your red brake light. You either have a hydraulic brake fluid level problem, park brake is applied or even partially applied, even if you just move that handle to where it doesn't even click one time, that light's gonna come on. So sometimes that handle can be pulled up just like one click and you might not even notice it, but the brake light's gonna be on, you may not know why. The red brake light's on the car, always just to make sure the park brake is released. Yeah.
So if it's pulled up that much, can you still drive the car without noticing?
If you pulled it up one click,
Yeah.
and the red brake light came on, because it will as soon as you move that handle, you could still drive the car and not even notice it.
Okay.
Because it's not really gonna apply the brakes until you get probably 3, right? And then it's gonna start to stop the car. But you could drive it like that and wouldn't even notice it.
Happened to my mom one time. I'm back in elementary, I was freaking out. And we're just driving, I hear like a weird grinding noise, but I didn't know anything.
Another thing, a lot of cars, they won't let you do that. Like if I was driving down the road in my car, let's say I was driving down the road 40 miles an hour, and I just grabbed the park brake and just pulled it one click. Not even apply the brakes. The car would start screaming at me. Ding, 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 right? So it's almost impossible to drive it like that, but you could.
Well, I had like 2007, so it didn't make a noise when you just drive. So like,
Yeah.
it was just driving,
Some,
usually like.
yeah, some cars will warn you, some won't, but.
We just noticed that.
Yeah, it's possible to drive with the brake on, or apply it a little bit. But the thing is, when you get in the car, you should notice that stuff, just be aware of what's going on in your car. Why would you just go take off and drive when that red brake light's staring at you?
I've done that before.
All right.
I have the foot press e-brake, so I didn't think about it.
Yep. If the red brake light is on, first thing you need to do is make sure the park brake is not set.
Some people don't even know what the parking brake is. I showed you this lady, I parked the car, but the park brake's on the floor. I think I pressed it too hard, and then you can't even see it when you look down.
Mm-hmm.
So she started driving, and you just hear, she was dragging it. And then everybody hears it and looks at her. She comes out the car, she comes to me, she's like, tell me, I'm like, where's my parking brake? And I showed it down here, you just click it out.
Yeah, it's one of those, you just push again and it releases it, right?
And some customers,
Best thing to do is if the car is on a level ground, don't even worry about setting a park brake.
yeah, I'm just used to it, because I just do it all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah. Some people get used to it because they're used to like parking in a driveway with trucks. You know, some people just do it all the time. Some people never use it.
Sometimes it's too hard for people to put it down.
Yeah.
They come to
Yeah.
ask us, "Can you put a parking
Yeah,
brake?"
can you release my park brake for me? Right.
So for e-brakes, does it, or not does it, but like, could you also consider it as something that you can use when you're parking on a slope to relieve stress from the transmission, or like?
Mm-hmm, absolutely, that's what it's for.
Cause my mom, like I've told her time and time again, cause she parks in the driveway and then, I wanna say maybe a year or two ago, she started having transmission problems and she had to take it to the dealership and she had to get a new transmission. So ever since then, whenever she parks in the driveway, I'm like, cause our driveway's pretty steep. I'm like,
Yep, if you get a steep
put your
driveway,
e-brake on if you're in
put
the
it,
driveway.
put it in neutral,
Neutral.
Yes.
set the brake, then put it in park.
Exactly.
Then you're taking the stress off the transmission. The transmission is now not holding the car.
Yeah.
If you don't do it that way, the transmission is holding the car.
Exactly.
And it does not like that.
Exactly. And she doesn't want to listen. Every time I get in the car, I do it for her. But like, you know, if she's at the house and she asks me to go somewhere with her, hop in the car. It's,
Yeah.
I just let her know. I was like, it's your car. I just don't want you to go get another transmission.
Right? Okay. Park brake linkage, they have linkage rods, cables, all that kind of stuff. The transfer cables transmit the force to the intermediate one, or equalizer to the application cable. We saw that before.
And did you say there's cars that have automatic, that put an automatic mute all the time?
Wait, yeah.
Like
You
hybrid.
said-
What,
did you say
when you
that-
start your car and you drive off, then it takes it off.
No, because, I
When you
heard-
park and turn the car off.
Because usually there's some newer cars, like my mom's, as soon as she puts it in park, the parking brake automatically just comes on. It doesn't, she doesn't have to do anything, she just does it, so.
When she puts it in park, it applies the brake.
It applies the emergency brake all the stuff.
So, what kind of car is it?
The Lexus RX 350.
Okay,
So
okay.
as soon as she puts it in park, it just goes on.
It just, so it's got, obviously has an electric park brake, so it just sets the brake for you.
It does it for her automatically, she
Hmm.
doesn't do nothing.
What were you gonna say?
A lot of the Hondas at the dealership do that.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
It'll set the park brake when you put it in park?
Yeah, no, okay, so this is what I do. I don't even put it in park. As soon as I hit the power button, it automatically goes to e-brake in park.
Really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's like the new 2023, 2024, like Honda Pilots, Accord, Civics. As soon as I hit, like, I open the door, roll the windows up, power button, it automatically parks.
Hmm. Okay. Anyway, we saw this before, pedal, your equalizer where the adjustment is. The equalizer is always gonna be where the single cable goes into two cables. Okay, because you only got one cable coming off your lever or your foot thing, right? So when it gets to the equalizer, it's gonna split into two, so you can have one for each, you know, rear brake, obviously. That's a rusty cable, it just looks like you got all fat. There's another example of the equalizer, again, it's gonna, when it goes from one cable to two, to go to the both rear brakes. Common adjustment spot. In order to adjust it, you just loosen this one nut here, and then this one's gonna be your adjuster, and then you just tighten that one back up against it. This just locks this nut, so it doesn't just turn or able to misadjust itself. She's showing the clips of all the brake lines. Lever, pedal, rods, cable, equalizers, if it's cable operated. Front entry, rear entry, all that is which way does the park brake cable come into the backing plate, right? Does it come in from front or back? Not really all that important. Okay, this is the integral drum one. This is the one that has the rear drum service brake to serve as the parking brake. Rear disc auxiliary drum parking brake, that's the one that has the fixed caliper commonly having a parking brake or brake drum formed into the hub of the brake rotor. Small dual servo brake friction assembly serves as your park brake. We looked at that in the drum brake thing already. Okay, if you have rear disc brakes with the shoe type, this is what it would look like. Kind of cut open. You can see your brake shoes in here. That's obviously a cutaway picture, they call that a hat sometimes. And I think that picture's in the book as well, just showing you how the brake shoes look inside the rotor. So that rotor is actually a brake drum and a rotor. But obviously, this is just for parking, okay? Just for your parking. Your regular disc brake does your normal braking. Okay. This is going to cover a couple of different ways that the caliper actuated park brake works. It's really not all that important. All you have to know is that the caliper actuated one does not have the integral brake shoes inside the rotor. There's a screw, nut, cone, ball, and ramp. Again, not all that important. Just showing you how it works. So, as I mentioned before, the real takeaway from this is if you have the integral park brake in the caliper like this, it has some sort of mechanism in it that's operated mechanically, not hydraulically. Okay? So all it does is it applies the brake pads just like it would if you hit the brake, only it does it through a mechanical application cable, or it might even have an electric motor that pulls the cable. So it uses this in order to apply the brake pads. It doesn't use the hydraulic system, okay? Really all you need to know about that. This is going to get into detail about how it works, but this is one of the reasons you have to rotate this back in on these type. Okay, if you have the integral type like that, and you're going to replace the rear brake pads, this is one of the reasons you have to, you can't just press this back in, you have to screw it back in. Because as it wears, that actually, as the pad wears, that turns, okay? You have to screw it back in. Yeah. We don't have to worry about all of this, honestly. All right, on a cable adjustment,
Barnes and Noble.
most of the time, what is that?
Surgical magnifying glass. Well,
Bookmark,
plastic.
magnifying glass, type thing.
What do you use it for?
It's a
To
bookmark.
see bigger, the
Oh,
words
that's-
bigger.
Oh, interesting.
I was gonna use it as a bookmark, but like so I can look it up.
Oh, that's cool.
That's why that's where we got it from.
Okay. Most of the time, the manufacturer's gonna say, 3 or 4 clicks on your park brake should hold the car. Maximum of 8 to 10 when applying the brake. If it takes more than that, the cable needs to be adjusted, okay? And it's adjusted at the equalizer. First thing you need to do is make sure that the regular brakes are in good condition and adjusted properly. Your service brake, meaning your normal brake, okay? Apply the parking brake to 3 or 4 clicks. Adjust the park brake mechanism to spec. Release it, wheels should roll freely.
Does it damage it if you hit it to the floor?
Nope. But if you have the type of foot brake where you just push it again to release it, sometimes if you set it really hard, it's really hard to get it to release, because you gotta push it even farther to get it to release, so.
That happens to my mom. I push it to the
Yeah,
floor.
don't get too crazy with setting the rate. You don't have to kill that pedal. Just get it to where you start to feel resistance on it, and maybe a click after that, but, yeah. You know, if you try to really smash that pedal down, it's gonna be hard to release it. It's the same with this, okay? If you have a hand brake, and let's say the brakes are good and they're adjusted right and all that, this should hold your car at, let's say, 4 clicks, right? And let's say somebody, you know, pulls it to 6. It's gonna be hard to release that brake, because you have to pull it past one of these little ratchet stops again, and then push the button at the same time in order to get it to release. There's just no reason to pull it that hard. Some will actually have the adjuster put cable right here, so that's all they're showing you there.
I've done that before, but I was just fucking with it to see how far I could bring it up.
Yeah, we used to do that every once in a while. We mess with our friend, you know, and get in there and set their park brake so hard that they couldn't hardly get it off. Yeah, not a good idea. We've seen this before on our drum brake thing. This, all they're telling you here is if you had to remove this park brake cable for whatever reason, you had to replace it. It's got these little fingers on it that are kind of spring-loaded, and when you put it through this hole, they kind of expand like that so it won't move. So if you use a wrench or a hose clamp to squeeze these, then you can pull that cable out of there, okay? On the electric park brake, those will use a couple of different designs. You could use a cable pulled by an electric motor rather than a handle or a foot brake, okay? More advanced users will use a computer controlled motor to actuate the caliper. Okay, on the electric park brake, it could still have a cable, but it's gonna use an electric motor to pull the cable instead of having you pull it or push it with your foot, okay? Some of them will actually have caliper actuated through the electronics. That's an example of one that would have the cable system, however, it uses an electric motor. So you may have a push button or electric park brake that uses an actual motor like that, but all this motor does, it just takes the place of you pulling the handle or pushing the foot brake, okay? This motor will pull the cable for you when you hit the button, okay? Pretty simple. Computer controlled cable type, okay. All right, we'll do the quiz after lunch and then we'll move on.